productivity crisis, and our national productivity has dropped to near the bottom of OECD rankings, just ahead of Mexico. If you look at the Harvard Index of Economic Complexity, you'd also see that in the last 30 years we've dropped from 62nd in 1995 to 105 this year, and that's out of 149 nations. So if you look at all these different metrics, we are dropping behind, and it should alarm every Australian because productivity drives our economy. It's what drives wages, it drives job creation, and productivity drives our national prosperity. And yet this Albanese government is pushing ahead with environmental law reforms that will make a bad situation far, far worse. And that's why we don't support this bill. Labor's proposed changes to the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, known as the EPBC Act, will slow down investment, send projects offshore. It will continue that rapid deindustrialisation that we're witnessing right now, and it will put more Australian jobs at risk. And some industry groups have said that these reforms are worse than the laws we've had for 26 years. I think that's a pretty damning indictment on this bill. So let me relate this back to my electorate of Canning, where I live. Back home in the Peel region, industry just isn't part of the economy, it's part of our identity. And Alcoa has operated in our region for decades, with the Huntley and Willowdale bauxite mines. You also have the Pinjarra and Wagerup refineries. We're going to have a gallium plant, which Prime Minister Albanese and President Trump announced in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago. That'll be right in the heart of my electorate. And just to the south-eastern border, we also have Australia's largest gold mine, Newmont, as well as South 32's Worsley alumina refinery operation as well. So the Peel region, which I represent, relies upon heavy industry for local jobs. And if you go to any of our school graduations, if you go to a lot of our charities, you'll actually find that Alcoa sponsors a lot of the prizes given to kids at the end of the school year, and they're also behind a lot of the charitable donations that are made towards our volunteer groups. So it's really important that we keep these jobs and we keep this heavy industry in this country. It contributes millions to our economy and it plays a vital role in our community. Very proud for my kids to go to school with Alcoa families. And my son, last year, his basketball coach was an Alcoa dad who works at the Pinjarra refinery. And it was great to just see what difference Alcoa has made across the community, right even in our basketball team. It's a cornerstone of our community and it's a symbol of what strong, stable industry looks like. But under Labor's reforms, businesses like Alcoa will face more red and green tape, longer delays and greater uncertainty. We've already seen the Kwinana refinery close down and a lot of people were affected with their jobs. I've spoken to some of the workers who took redundancies, not because they wanted to, but because they were forced to. And we've also lost an important part of the Alcoa operation on our west coast. But these changes proposed in this law will make it harder to get projects approved, and even if they are approved, they'll carry greater risk. The proposed Environmental Protection Authority would have sweeping powers to issue indefinite stop work orders. That's not oversight, that's overreach. And yet, whilst this government claims to have a productivity agenda, this bill suggests otherwise. Now, the government says they've introduced this legislation in October. Despite previously saying it wouldn't come before Christmas. And now they're rushing it to pass it in the final sitting weeks of the year, with barely 2 weeks for consultation. It's reckless, it's rushed, it's wrong, makes a mockery of this whole parliamentary process. The reason why we have committee work is to make sure that the laws that are passed are examined with due diligence and that laws are amended through that committee process as required. I support strong environmental protections and I've stood up for my community over the last few years. I opposed a dredge of the Pilharvey estuary because we have a lot of local fishermen. We have a very unique habitat there that needed protecting, and I support our local environment. I want to protect it, like the beautiful forestry we have up in Dwellingup, which abuts a lot of Alcoa's operations. Like everything in life, there are trade-offs, and I acknowledge that there are environmental groups who are opposed to Alcoa operations, but we have to find the balance, and we have to have strong local industry, we have to have strong jobs, but we also have to protect the beautiful Jarrah forests that we enjoy in Western Australia. We all want to preserve the natural beauty of our country and our local environment, but we also need laws that support industry, jobs and growth and productivity, because we need Australia to be competitive, we need it to be productive, we need it to be prosperous, and we need it to be secure. Mining and manufacturing pay for our hospitals, our schools, our roads and essential services, and WA does a lot of heavy lifting. Western Australians are proud of what we've achieved through our resources sector. Some like to brag about it. I just think it's a really positive contribution to the country, and it means that with horizontal fiscal equalisation, which guarantees uniform services across the states, a lot of that is funded by the resources sector in Western Australia, and we're proud of that. In the 2023-24 financial year alone, mining companies contributed nearly $60 billion in taxes and royalties, and that's what funds the services Australia rely on every single day. I think of my community, where NDIS needs are quite significant, and I have an ageing population as well, and aged care is a critical thing that we all need, and our industry funds those essential services. Now, Labor's reforms threaten those things. They risk sending investment offshore and locking Australia into a downward spiral, a downward economic spiral where we become less and less productive and less prosperous. Now, if Labor does a deal with the Greens, who want to ban all coal and gas projects, I mean, this is sort of economic vandalism if we ever saw it, we'll see even more damage done to the economy. Now, Labor calls that environmental stewardship, but we call it economic sabotage. Now, the Business Council of Australia has also raised serious concerns, and their CEO, Bran Black, said the EPBC system must support economic growth. But I think it's clear that this government is not listening. Instead, they're creating a bureaucratic monster, a massive monolith, and a new EPA with unchecked powers and no clear accountability. It goes far beyond what was recommended in the independent review led by Graham Samuel. That review called for a commissioner, not an unaccountable authority. But in its current form, the EPA would act as both assessor and auditor, marking its own homework. The CEO would be a statutory appointment with no binding statement of expectations and no clear KPIs. The only person who could dismiss them would be the Governor-General. And I think all of us here believe in the sovereignty of the Parliament, and I think vesting the CEO with that sort of authority is a massive mistake. It's a massive mistake. Now, we've heard statements like the minister claiming that these reforms would prevent mining under Uluru, and I think that's a pretty poor attempt to sell a bad policy with a fantastical and nonsensical example. No one is proposing to mine under Uluru. What we need here is serious policy and not political theatre. And, Deputy Speaker, that's why the Coalition will fight to amend these laws. We will stand up for industry, for jobs and for the communities that rely on them. We'll be thinking about the families who rely on the jobs across this country that this bill will impact. And I think of the families I represent in the Peel region in Western Australia. We will protect the prosperity that comes from hard work, investment and responsible development. And back home, we know the value of industry. We know what it means to have stable jobs, strong businesses and a future built on productivity and competitiveness. It's very clear the world is getting more and more competitive. Nations are investing more and more in their energy security rather than emissions reduction. And Australia's got to wake up. People like to say we are the lucky country. Well, I like to quote Lee Kuan Yew, the Prime Minister of Singapore, who said, this isn't a game of cards. We've got to fight for our future, and we've got to be good stewards of what we have and invest in the future so that our kids and the kids that follow them will have the same prosperity and security that we have. And I think Labor's reckless reforms in this bill put all of that at risk, which is why I oppose it. Thank you.